On today's episode of Phinside The NFL, well, the AFC East has become a wild ride, and we will talk about it all as the Bills and the Jets make big moves for wide receiver ones, and we'll talk about what the Dolphins should do from here on out. We'll talk about it all. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. And as always, let's get into this.
Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field down the near side, man open, touchdown! The run from Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for the touchdown again!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphins fan. Let's go! What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and I'm on time just despite Brittany today. Appreciate all y'all coming through on this episode powered by BetUS. We're going to talk about the AFC East as it's taken quite the dramatic turn today after that loss yesterday by the Jets, a Monday Night Football where really, if, Greg Zuerlein did his job, the Jets should have probably won the game yesterday. We'll see how this all shakes out, and we'll talk about what I think, how this all shakes out for the Jets and the Bills. But as far as yesterday's game, it went the way I thought it would go. I've said since the offseason that I thought the Jets were overrated. I just didn't see it, and I still haven't seen it. That game-sealing pick by Taron Johnson was just the icing on the cake for me. I believe if we had Tua right now, this would be a two-team, race in the AFC East right now between the Bills and the Dolphins, even with the issues we have outside of Tua and his injury and the offensive issues that we had that were starting to rear their ugly head. Even when Tua was in the lineup, I still think we'd be where we are today, and that's the second seed in the AFC East because the Bills would have beat us. But we would have beat Tennessee. I think if I come up here and tell y'all from what I saw when Tim Boyle got the ball and the throws he was making to Jonnu, to Durham Smythe, etc., if I am out here and said to you guys, I thought we would have had a chance to win that game if Tim Boyle started, what do you think I think if Tua was starting? Cue the Ben Stiller dodgeball. I know that you know that I know. Cue that. But so I think this record would be a lot different. I think it's a realistic possibility this team could have been 4-1 with Tua, even with their issues. So now, all of that said, yesterday I did a video talking about Carson, Beck, and how Miami was clearly more than likely scouting him. I got a text message after the show basically telling me that Carson, Beck, and Shedeur Sanders are two of the quarterbacks in this class so far that they already have done heavy scouting on. So my point stands that it seems they were out at the Georgia game this weekend. Carson Beck was one of the guys. I'm sure they're looking at Malachi Starks and Michael Williams and everyone else too out there in Georgia. But Carson Beck was definitely a player they were scouting and watching. As I was told after my live show, I got a text message and said that yes, Sanders and Beck are two guys they have already scouted heavily. So there you go. Now, continuing on. All right, let's get into all of this stuff because, what are we all here for? We're all here for to talk about what went down today. And, again, everyone's in, one thing I've learned about this fan base since I've been doing this for, this is my 5th season now. Knee-jerk reactions, so reactionary, so microwave society. We want it right now. We want a reaction right now. What is Grier? And this is what's funny about this. And I got to say this, and we're going to talk about the whole trade thing, but like so many people I'm seeing who don't like Grier and want Grier gone want to give Grier full reign to go make a trade right now. If you're not happy with the roster construction and what he's done up until this point, do you think one deal in October is A, going to change your view on him? And B, do you trust him? If you already don't like how he's constructed this roster, why are you going to trust him with more draft resources? Because I've already gone on record and said this. Guys, if we're picking a quarterback in the 1st or 2nd round, I do not want Chris Grier making that pick. How many shots at a quarterback is this guy going to get? Now, albeit, did he pick the right one talent-wise with Tua? I mean, Tua was the first Pro Bowl quarterback in 30 years for the Miami Dolphins. Led the league in passing last year. The year before that, led the league in passer rating. We've seen him elevate Mike McDaniel, Tyreek Hill, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, talent-wise, he made the right call. Durability-wise, obviously not the right call. I mean, you could say the same for Joe Burrow in Cincinnati right now. Now, he's not hurt right now, but games lost, it's about the same as Tua. More than Tua now, actually, right now as it currently sits, even with this current concussion. So, and they didn't get a Super Bowl out of it. They got to the Super Bowl and lost. Haven't sniffed it since. So, listen, talent-wise, Grier got the quarterback call right, but durability-wise, he did not. And all the people who are out here saying, I told you so about Tua's injury, I told you so. No, you didn't tell us so. Y'all told us that the posterior wall fracture and the hip injury is what would hold Tua back. Y'all never told us concussions would be his downfall. No one saw him concussed with a broken nose after the posterior wall fracture at Alabama and said, well, it's going to be the concussion. It's not going to be the wall fracture. It's going to be the concussion. No. No revisionist histories around here. And a lot of the people who said that Tua wouldn't work didn't even focus in on the injuries. They said he would never be a franchise quarterback. They said he'd never be a Pro Bowl quarterback. They said he'd never lead the league in passing. And yet somehow these people are trying to brainwash people and say, well, I was right all along, when I just named about 4 things they were wrong on with Tua alone. Just saying, right? So, but he did get that right, but he got Rosen wrong. Skylar Thompson's been a failure. Now, I've heard privately Skylar Thompson was more of a scouting department, Darrell Bevel type of call, all right? And I heard that years ago when this pick happened. And I've said that multiple times on the show already, so anyone who's been listening to me for a couple of years already knows that. And, I mean, Bridgewater, Brissett ended up not being competent backups. Bridgewater was seen as one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL, came here, and, I mean, other than Tua, Chris Grier hasn't got a quarterback decision right, and even Tua has an asterisk next to his name because of the injuries. Yeah, you got the talent right, but you got the durability is starting to cancel that out here. So I don't know. How many coaches, how many GMs get a shot? Remember, he's on his 3rd coach. Okay. How many coaches get a shot at 3? How many GMs get a shot at 3 coaches and like 3 or more quarterbacks in that time? That's ridiculous. Like, we are in unprecedented territory here. 9 lives. This guy's got 90 of them. Never mind 9 lives. This guy's living a cat's life 10 times over with 90 lives. It's ridiculous. And listen, I don't want to see this team squeak out to 9-8 or whatever and be middle of the pack. We've lived in that purgatory. We've lived in that purgatory with Tannehill. Either put Skylar Thompson in and let it ride for that number 1 pick, or let's get this shit together and make a run. That's where I'm at with this situation. I want to make a move, but not because the Jet or the Jills did. I want to make a move because I see a small light and need edge help. Okay, we'll talk about that. All right, we'll talk about that. All right, let's talk about that for a sec. Let's talk about the edge help. Because I see the hot names are Myles Garrett and Max Crosby right now. Okay? I see that everywhere. Right now, the hot names are Max Crosby and Myles Garrett. First of all, we don't know if Myles Garrett is on the block. Everyone's assuming it because they traded Amari Cooper. Max Crosby wants to stay in Raiders Nation, but because of what's gone on, people are assuming he might go. Let me ask you this. Put yourself in Stephen Ross's shoes for a sec. All right, this is not just a night. This is everyone who wants an edge rusher right now. Put yourself in Stephen Ross's shoes right now. Okay? Now let's think about this. And we're not talking about talent here. We're talking about situation. And you as an owner. 2 years ago, literally, it'll be 2 years ago in about, 15, 16 days. In about just over 2 weeks, it'll be 2 years to the day. November 1st, 2022. You said, hey, go make the move. And what did Chris Grier do? Traded a 2025 fifth round pick. Sorry, he received Bradley Chubb and a 2025 fifth round pick, but he had to trade away a 2023 first round pick, a 2024 fourth round pick, and Chase Edmonds. So you've already greenlit 2 years ago to the day him trading for a guy who's still on the roster and who's hurt right now and who got extended, might I add. Let's not also forget that Bradley Chubb also got a deal, okay? And it was no small chump change at all thrown out. We're talking about a 5-year, $110 million deal with about $53 million guaranteed. Okay, you already said, okay, I will greenlight the trade of you giving up a first-round pick in 2023, a fourth-round pick in 2024, and Chase Edmonds, plus I'll okay you a $110 million deal for you to go get Bradley Chubb, who you also got to send a 2025 fifth-round pick. And you also get a 2025 fifth-round pick back. I've already okayed this scenario. You really think Stephen Ross is going to turn around and say, go get him, Chris? And again, this is not talking because Max Crosby and Myles Garrett are better than Bradley Chubb. Chubb was playing well before he got hurt last year. This is situational. You really think Ross is going to say, you know what, Chris? Go get him. Go package another first round pick and go get us another edge rusher. When you've already got Jalen Phillips, you just spent a first-round pick on Chop Robinson. Phillips was a first-round pick as well. You gave out a $110 million deal to a guy you already traded a first-round pick for. You really think Stephen Ross is going to say, let's go? I don't see it. I do not see Ross saying, go get him, Chris. I don't see it. Because let's be real here. Let's keep it $150. If you do, like I said, if you are not happy with Chris Grier and his roster construction, you want to now give him full reign to go use first, second, third, fourth round picks to go get more players right now? After all the money that's been spent already, after all the draft picks that have already been spent, whether it's been in trades or whether it's been with actual drafting players, some of which they don't keep, Robert Hunt. Now you want to say, here's the war chest. Let's open it again, Chris. No, not right now. Especially at 2 and 3. You've got the Colts, you've got the Cardinals, and you've got the Bills. Let these next 3 games play out. You got those 3 games, right? We play the Bills on November 3rd. The trade deadline is November 5th. Let those 3 games play out before you make any decision. You have to. We are not in a position where we can, at 2 and 3 right now, where you can go start mortgaging next year's day 1 or day 2 picks. And I'll do you one even better. For all of you that want Chris Grier gone, not only am I going to use the, okay, you don't like his roster construction argument, so why would you give him more picks and more resources to further construct this roster? Not only is that hypocritical, but let's hit it with one more. If you want him gone, why are you taking away from the potential war chest from the next GM? I've already proved, why would you trust him to make this trade if you don't trust him already? Now, if you want him gone, why are you hand-capping the next guy to come around? That makes no sense whatsoever. Now, if we win if you win the next 3 games, if Tua comes back, if you win this week, you get to 500, Tua comes back, you beat Arizona, and then you somehow miraculously find a way to beat the Buffalo Bills, go make a move. Now, I know people want interior offensive line. Here's the problem you're going to run into with that. Now, remember, I did have trade deadline targets that I wanted them to acquire last year, right? I did, if you go back to me and Neil had a show, right? We had a show all about this, and there were a few, I forget who I had on there. I know I had the Bears interior offensive lineman. Anyways, my whole point is this. Unless a team's having a fire sale right now, right? Unless a team is, unless a team's having a fire sale, it's going to be hard to get an interior offensive lineman. Because teams that are tanking for a draft pick, they want as many linemen as possible for the quarterback they're going to draft. Even guys who already have their young quarterback, they're not going to, and they're not good right now. They're not going to start shipping off interior offensive linemen and start weakening the foundation in front of their guys. We missed the boat on James Daniels because of all the injuries. So, I just think that, you might be able to get a depth guy right now. That might be a move. You could probably get a depth guy. Now, I remember last year I found it. I wanted Cody Whitehair. I wanted Daniel Brunskill. Cesar Ruiz. Those were the 3 guys who could play guard and center. Now, Whitehair's gone to a new team. Brunskill's still in Tennessee. And they use him in those 6. We saw it against us. They use him in those 6 lineman packages, those heavy packages. I don't think you're getting Cesar Ruiz because, Rattler played decent. Yeah, he threw 2 picks and 1 touchdown, but he played decent early on. First quarter, first half, he was making some nice throws. And Derek Carr, right? They're not going to weaken their chances in the NFC. That's wide open. So, we'll do a trade deadline target show again this year. My point is, it's going to be hard to get a top tier interior offensive line option. Now, everyone wants an edge rusher. Again, I would be more on board for adding people are like, let's go get Hassan Reddick. First of all, that's going to be an in-division trade, so the Jets, you'll pay more than any other team did, number 1. Number 2, does Hassan Reddick really tip the scales? Ask yourself this question. The guy hasn't been The guy hasn't been on the field for how long? He didn't participate in OTAs. He didn't participate in the preseason. He didn't participate in training camp. I mean, what are we saying here with Hassan Reddick? Because I've seen people comment, well, Hassan Reddick. No. If you're like, but then you come back to, okay, if you beat the Colts this week to get back to 500, if you beat the Cardinals, and then you beat the Buffalo Bills, now you are sitting at 5-3. Are you still willing to mortgage a first or second round pick to go get Max Crosby or to get Myles Garrett, who we don't even know we don't even know for sure if either one are on the trade block. There's a lot of speculation right now. What do you do? Brittany says Braxton Berrios for Chris Jones. I'll throw in Julian Hill too. Yeah. Gonna need a little bit better than that. I love the optimism though. But, I don't know. And then, I know me and, we heard about the Daron Payne and the Jonathan Allen rumors, in the offseason. Well, now one of those guys is hurt, but also the Commanders are balling out, because this is what I think you should do. If you can't add a top-tier interior offensive lineman, try and find a guy who can play inside out too. That can be very effective, would be another option. But I think you got to wait and let these 3 games play out. If you lose to the Colts, Tua comes back, you beat the Cardinals, and then you lose to the Bills, that's not good. You're 3-5, and you just traded a first or second round pick for Max Crosby. And here's the thing. I believe Max Crosby and Myles Garrett are impact players. But is the defense really the issue right now? Is it really the issue? Yes, it is, in the sense of we can't stop, we get real leaky against the run. So we need a guy who can set the edge as well as pass rush. But stopping the run is really the only issue. Other than that, go look at where we rank in a lot of major statistical categories right now. Like, this is a team that the defense hasn't really dropped off from where they were last year under Fangio. That's the reality of the situation. Now, I would also agree if someone said, hey, we're getting a lot more pressures and we're not converting them to enough sacks. More of the sacks are coming from the interior guys, 110%. You wouldn't be wrong. But at the same point, we've given this offense how many prime field positions because of a turnover or on downs, or we created a turnover defensively and they ain't been able to do crap with it? Oh my God. Now, right now, the Dolphins are 26th in sacks, but you look at it right now, they're 5th in total defense. They're 18th against the rush, but they're 3rd against the pass. So that's why they're adding Davante Adams. They're adding, they're adding Davante Adams. They're adding Amari Cooper to the division now. I mean, should we really be worried? So, and we're number 1 on 3rd down. So let's talk about this further. Let's go into this further. Before we do, though, guys, this episode is sponsored by BetUS. Go over to betus.com right now. The Miami Dolphins are 3-point underdogs to the Indianapolis Colts as it stands right now. And on BetUS, you can use promo code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. And get your first 3 deposits up to $2,000 matched by 150%. Just use promo code YouTube150. And shout out to BetUS for sponsoring this episode. Remember, please gamble responsibly. And hey, You got to shout them out because they got some of the quickest payouts in the industry. So, back to this. Now, in case people are like just tuning in and they've been under a rock all day, if you didn't know, this is what went down. Davante Adams, he was traded for a conditional 3rd-round pick. It could become a 2nd-rounder based on performance. So Davante Adams to the Jets. Listen, here's the reality of the situation, what you got to talk about. Do the Jets have the best wide receiver trio in the NFL right now? Davante Adams, Garrett Wilson, and the way Allen Lazard's playing this year. We don't have a number 3 that's playing at the level Allen Lazard is playing this year. Like, let's be honest right now. That's being totally objective with the situation. That's being totally objective with the situation. Now, in fairness, from 2022 to 2023, Davante Adams, he had 355 targets. Waddle had 221. And Davante Adams, he only had about 290 yards more than Jalen Waddle on about 134 more targets. Now, he had 10 more touchdowns, but he was also the unquestioned number 1. Compared to Tyreek had actually 14 less targets than Davante Adams from 2022 to 2023, and Tyreek still finished with about almost 900 more yards than him. Almost. So, about 800 and 51 more yards, I think. So, 49, 849. So, I mean, Davante Adams is good, but I would say right now, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyreek Hill, you could even throw A.J. Brown in there. I would say they're better right now than Davante Adams. I mean, hell, you could have made the argument Stephon Diggs was better than him. Diggs had about, 48 less yards on about 41 less targets, but more receptions. So, he's Diggs level right now. So, hey, right now they got weapons. They will be able to stress defenses, that's for sure. And you can't tell me Aaron Rodgers isn't playing Madden GM over there. Robert Saleh gets shipped out. His boy gets brought in, Davante Adams. So, I mean, hey, we'll see. But, Davante Adams acquired by the New York Jets. And then, not to be outdone, after beating them yesterday, they tried to beat them again, and the Bills went out and acquired Amari Cooper. So basically, Buffalo gets Amari Cooper in a 6th. Cleveland gets a 3rd in 2025 and a 7th in 2026. Now, what's crazy about the Amari Cooper thing is, Amari Cooper was part of the Brandon Ayuk package that was originally agreed upon by the Cleveland Browns and the San Francisco 49ers, and then Ayuk basically shut the trade down. So, Amari Cooper, he's been in trade discussions all year. The Cleveland was in on Davante Adams in the offseason, and Amari Cooper was the guy they were offering up. And I'm pretty sure a deal was completed, and Davante kiboshed that. So, I mean, if it wasn't for kiboshes, Amari Cooper would have already been traded this offseason. So, but, it's crazy. We all thought the Cleveland Browns would be a real tough game in December, and I'm sure because of the atmosphere it will be. But Deshaun Watson is the worst contract relative to his play in maybe sports right now, and they just traded their number 1 receiver. So it's maybe it won't be as as tough as we thought. Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman aren't exactly lighting it up right now. David Njoku is even struggling because Watson just can't get him targets. So, Now, I don't think these guys will be trading Joel Bitonio or Jedrick Wills or Jack Conklin anytime soon, because I could very well see them potentially drafting a quarterback. So, but with this whole situation, I just think it's hard to add offensive line to the edge at this stage where we're at in the season right now. Again, I go over Stephen Ross already greenlit a first-round pick and multiple picks and multiple other assets being traded for Bradley Chubb, and then greenlit a $110 million contract. Now they can get out of it this offseason, that's fine. But he already greenlit that. And if we want Grier, listen, we don't want Grier picking another quarterback. Do we want Grier trading away that first or second round pick that could be that quarterback in this draft, that contingency plan we all pretty much agree we need in the building? Because here's the thing. I see some people saying, Grier needs to do something because he wants to keep his job. This is even more of a reason to say no. Do you think I want a man that's desperate to save his job going out and doing desperate things with our draft capital? No. That makes it even worse. And again, I go back. If you want him gone because you aren't happy with his roster, with the roster construction, now you want a guy you're not happy with the roster construction of, who's now desperately trying to use your draft capital, your high-end draft capital, to upgrade this roster in the short term? That's not a recipe for success if you're not a fan of his roster construction so far. That's just not. I just don't see giving him more assets to use. Now, if you want to trade a 5th or 6th or 7th round pick, okay, let's have the conversation. I'm down. If you can add, an interior defensive player, another edge, or an interior offensive lineman who's good. I'm not looking for great or elite for a 5th, 6th, or 7th round pick. But if you can add good for a 5th, 6th, or 7th round pick, okay. That's fine. Because 5th, 6th, 7th round picks are already crapshoots from the scouting department. Because as I've said before, a lot of, GMs are really hands-on for like the first 5 rounds. And then when you start getting into those late day 3 picks, that's when they start to rely on their scouting department. And like Patrick McMorris is a perfect example. Patrick McMorris was a guy that our scouting department was banging the table for, not Chris Grier. And so in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, you can afford to lean. It's why I go back to the scouting Thompson. I was told it was the scouting staff and scouting department and Darrell Bevel who were pushing for that. This is why I go back to that. Because when you get into those later rounds, scouting department has a little bit more, leeway in terms of they have a little bit more grace given to them when it comes to the picks. So, yeah, knock yourself out. GMs aren't graded on how they hit on those 5th, 6th, 7th rounds. They're really graded on how they hit in the first 3 or 4 rounds. And so, hey, if you can go get a good player that upgrades our interior offensive line or this defense on the front, knock yourself out. So, but I don't want moves coming out reeking of desperation just to answer what our rivals are doing. I don't think that's a good idea at all. So let's get into it. Let's keep talking about it. Adam Beasley had an article on Pro Football Network. This is what he said today. Cap-strapped Miami Dolphins stuck in mud as AFC East rivals sprint ahead. 2 wide receiver trades changed the AFC East landscape Tuesday to the Miami Dolphins' detriment. First, the New York Jets acquired Davante Adams for a third-round pick that could become a second. Then the Buffalo Bills kept pace by acquiring Amari Cooper from the Cleveland Browns. The cost, a 2025 third and 2026 seventh. Are the Jets and Bills pulling ahead of the Miami Dolphins? The Dolphins 2-3 in the 9th seed. Meanwhile, we're standing pat at the time of the story's publication. Unless they really want to blow a hole in next year's budget, they largely would do the same through next month's trade deadline. Why? They're basically down to the felt for the next 17 months unless they trade away marquee pieces. Chris Grier's personnel department entered Tuesday with just $6 million in 2024 salary cap space per the NFLPA's database, and Miami needs to roll over every bit of that to simply be in the black next March. The Dolphins already have all the big money contracts they can handle. Their projected available space, even with the rollover, is in the low seven figures. They have 10 players whose 2025 scheduled cap figures are in excess of $10 million. Tua Tagovailoa's cap cost alone is close to $40 million. And while the Dolphins could restructure Tua's deal to free up space, it's probably not a great idea to do so given his uncertain long-term availability given his fourth concussion. As his deal currently stands, Miami could move on with tolerable dead cap pain after the 2026 season. A restructure would probably tie the organization to him through at least 2027. That makes no sense if as we argue they should, the Dolphins are considering drafting a plan B at the position this spring. Certainly the Bills weren't in great cap shape either entering the day. They had $11.4 million available in 2024 and $10.7 million projected in 2025 in terms of cap space, but the Cooper move was an incredible value. Buffalo owes him just $800,000 over the next 3 months because Cleveland converted $18.8 million of its $20 million base salary into a bonus before the season. Any trade the Dolphins swing over the next few weeks will have to be for a player with similar financial demands. So what's the Dolphins' next step? The path forward for the Dolphins, it's for the players that are paying handsomely to earn those big salaries. Tyreek Hill is the NFL's fifth highest paid receiver. Jalen Waddle ranks 7th in $28.3 million. Entering week 7, they rank 38th and 52 respectively in receiving yards, 286 and 258. More is needed from them, not the Dolphins front office. And now, even like I said, when you look at the stats from 2022 to 2023, first of all, Amari Cooper and Jalen Waddle are basically identical. And Jalen Waddle was not that far off from Davante Adams. And remember, both of those guys were bona fide number ones in their situation, while Waddle was playing second fiddle to Tyreek, who leads all of them over the span of 2022 and 2023. So, and I agree with that. You have to stand pat right now. You have to let these 3 games play out before you make anything happen. All right? You've got the Colts, the Cardinals, and the Bills up until November 3rd, and the trade deadline is on November 5th. Now, if we win the next 2 games, get to 4-3, and then, I would be, okay, make a move, make a move. If you beat the Bills, I would be, okay, yeah, make a move. But still, I will say this. I am reluctant to touch any picks in those. Well, we can't touch the first 3, the picks in the 3rd round because they're going to be compensatory picks for Robert Hunt and Christian Wilkins, and you can't trade those. But I would be very hesitant to move 1st and 2nd round picks, given you don't know if Grier's not here. You don't want to touch that war chest for the new guy coming in, and if Grier is here or he isn't here, do you want to touch those picks if you want to go draft a legit contingency plan? I don't think so. This is why there should be no reactionary trade right now. Stand pat and let these 3 weeks play out. I agree with that and what he said 110%. All right? Now, here's what Dave Hyde said. Dave Hyde had this article. It's behind a paywall. And he said, Dave Hyde, as Bills and Jets add needed help, Dolphins need crucial answers now. Somewhere over the long football weekend in which Bill Belichick made fun of the New York Jets and the Buffaloes, Josh Allen maintained control of the AFC East. A tremor of new went through the division. The Bills won again, then traded for Amari Cooper. The Jets showed some fire and life, and then traded for Davante Adams. Even the Patriots took a small one toward tomorrow. The Dolphins, meanwhile, need answers today. This next practice. By Sunday in Indianapolis, for certain, considering the season again will have the feel of the end of gangplank. Can they again stop the plunge into cold water? There's still plenty of season for the Dolphins to reclaim their way. A 2-3 record isn't a death sentence. Even division opponents adding prime pieces isn't a prime problem. But the Dolphins haven't played well in any game while having the easiest schedule thus far, because opponents have a league low 400 win percentage over that span. 3 of their 5 games were against 1-win teams. Tennessee beat the Dolphins for their only win. See, it's not just a quarterback situation behind an injured Tua Tagovailoa that's been botched to date. Coach Mike McDaniel said the question he delved into before their last game and win in New England was, why are we 1-3? He updated it to 2-3 this past week and peeled back the involved layers for answers. The material evidence sits in front of everyone. Last in scoring, last in penalties per game, second to last in red zone touchdowns, 29th in third down conversion percentage, 27th in sacks, 23rd in turnover margin. The special teams squad that ranked 31st last season has picked up there again. Some good news, the defense leads the league in stopping teams on third down. That's a nice number even as an outlier. Well, they're also number 3 against the pass and number 5 in total defense, so don't forget those, Dave. We got better before we played the Patriots, and my expectation is that we have a collective understanding of how to get better, not to be confused with what we want our desired result to be, McDaniel said. There was no magic fairy dust that got it that better. Our operation, our communication was better because we put in work at that, and so my expectation is to see all of my teammates double down on that to improve up what we improved upon. The Dolphins found a running game against New England with 193 yards on the ground. That's a useful idea, especially with 2 out another week. But the Dolphins defense was also shredded to 7.9 yards per carry by the Patriots. Indianapolis surely noticed that, considering its own quarterback issues. The goal isn't so much to win the season in October, it's to not lose in here. It's to keep possibilities alive for December. The most important absolute non-negotiable is you have to play your best football at the end of the year for you to like the results at the end of the year, McDaniel said. I think what has to be done in this bye week is the same thing that has been done in the last 2, is that we have to, as coaches and players, collectively evolve and have our best football at the end of the season. 2 games are against the Jets. They evolved some, even while losing to Buffalo on Monday night. Adams gives quarterback Aaron Rodgers the kind of familiar receiver their offense needs. Belichick, speaking on the Manningcast during Monday's game, addressed the overachieving problem of the Jets in discussing fired coach Robert Saleh. The overarching problem, sorry. I'm not a big Jets fan, in case you didn't know that, Belichick said. I thought Coach Saleh did a really good job with this team. That's kind of what's been there with the Jets. They've barely won over 30% in the last 10 years. The owner being the owner, ready, aim, fire. Belichick's former New England team welcomed quarterback Drake May with the kind of 3-touchdown loss rebuilding teams love to celebrate. Maybe it's a ray of hope. Buffalo remains atop of the AFC East and added some marginal help in Cooper. He's better than any receiver they had. He gives Allen a respectable option downfield. The Dolphins took 3 games behind Buffalo already, but Buffalo isn't their target coming out of this bye week. It's themselves. Their penalties, their discipline, their involved problems through 5 games that need answers with so much of the season still in front of them. Again, Dave Hyde is making the point that a lot of these answers we're seeking as people are upgrading need to come from within. He's right. The penalties and the lack of discipline needs to be changed. I've talked about it with Omar. Does McDaniel need to start benching guys for quarters, for reps, for whatever the case, to start sending a message that we're not playing anymore? Because Julian Hill should have been benched a couple of times already. Listen, Austin Jackson struggling. You can bench him because you got Kendall Lamb. The problem you run into is you can't bench Liam, you can't bench Aaron Brewer, and you can't bench Robert Jones, because then you're getting into Lester Cotton territory. Now, everyone knows I'm a fan of Andrew Meyer, but Andrew Meyer hasn't played guard yet, and they're going to go with Brewer at center right now over Andrew Meyer, the UDFA. So, again, we need to, I think defensively, if you stop the leaky run defense, that defense can get into a position where it can start winning you games. Now, that defense has already done enough to help win us some games already, i.e. the Seahawks game, giving us the Kohu interception, what they did against the Patriots. They helped out big time. The Jaguars with the Holland knockout. the forced fumble. So the defense has already done its job in helping us get wins. But if you stop that leaky run defense, this defense can start helping you win games or straight up win games for you, I think. I really do. Just like I think if you, like, listen, I think you really only need one guard. I think you need a legitimate option at guard right now. Now, you could go get Brunskill from the Tennessee Titans, who I suggested last year, because he's still available. I mean, he plays center and he plays guard. It gives you another option behind Brewer in case something happens, but it also gives you a guy who can kick out to guard. So, you know, there are options right now. There are legitimate options if you want to try and trade for a player. That's just what it is. Now, are you going to trade for a player? I mean, that's another story. But when you go to other actual options, you can't lie. There are options. You know, I mean, I just don't know what else to say. There are trade deadline options right now, but are you gonna, you know? And I don't think a guy like Brunskill would, would cost very much. You know, I don't think so at all. So, I think those are like legitimate guys. You know, that's a legitimate guy you could. You could maybe pry away. Now, if you want to go offensive line, I think Brunskill is probably the best option out there right now that I know would probably be 110% on the board. Now you could go, if you want to go edge rusher, there's still guys out there. Like, I don't know what you'd have to pay for Azeez Ojulari, but I bet you could talk the Giants into partnering with Azeez Ojulari. He wouldn't cost you as much as Max Crosby or Myles Garrett, and that's a young guy. Remember, he had over 8 sacks in his first year in his rookie season. Everyone knows I was a fan of Azeez coming out. So there are options that I don't think would be expensive. Now, the problem is Azeez Ojulari, because of the recent capital spent, would probably still be expensive. Hell, there's options to upgrade from Huntley right now. You can go get Russell Wilson if you really want, but apparently Russell Wilson's starting this week. So, man. Now, you want a real sobering article. Shout out to Barry Jackson, because this is super sobering when you put this in perspective. Several Dolphins draft picks, free agents who left, are thriving elsewhere in the fallout. It's difficult enough for the Dolphins to string together a bunch of good draft picks, but when they hit on draft picks and those players leave during their prime, thrive elsewhere, it becomes especially exasperating. That's what's playing out this season at multiple positions. It's understandable that the salary cap strapped Dolphins couldn't re-sign Christian Wilkins and Robert Hunt, both who received $100+ million contracts, but at multiple other positions, the Dolphins bypassed re-signing their own players to deals that weren't outrageously expensive and instead added cheaper players who haven't been as good as the players who exited. And most of the key players who left are flourishing elsewhere. Consider keeping linebacker Andrew Van Ginkel, who has been a menace for Minnesota, would have only cost $3.25 million more in guaranteed money than signing Shaq Barrett, who retired 3 days before the start of training camp. Dolphins agreed to pay Barrett $6.75 million guaranteed in a 1-year, $7 million contract, while the Minnesota Vikings are paying Van Ginkel $10 million guaranteed in a 2-year, $20 million contract with another $3 million guaranteed next March. Here's another way of looking at it. The Dolphins gave nearly as much guaranteed money to Barrett and Tier Tart as Minnesota gave Van Ginkel. The Dolphins released Gallimore and Tart in August. And yes, Van Ginkel would have stayed if the Miami Dolphins matched the offer. How close did the Dolphins come to matching it? They wanted to keep him, but I don't think they were that close, Drew Rosenhaus said on Sunday night during his Fox segment earlier this month. If they could go back and do it over again, they certainly would have matched it. Rosenhaus also mentioned that Van Ginkel sustained a Lisfranc foot injury in the Week 18 game against Buffalo, and the Dolphins haven't had a lot of success of guys coming back from that. But after missing the offseason program while recovering, Van Ginkel has been exceptional with 2 interception returns for touchdowns and 3 sacks. Pro Football Focus rates him 29th amongst 114 edge players. At safety, the Dolphins didn't want to match Denver's 3-year, $20 million deal for Brandon Jones or Deshaun Elliott's 2-year, $6 million contract with Pittsburgh, opting instead to sign Poyer on a 1-year deal for $2 million. Jones, he's been outstanding for Denver. PFF ranks him 4th. PFF ranks him 4th amongst all safeties out of 83 that qualify. Elliott, he's ranked 9th amongst 83 safeties that qualify. Conversely, PFF rates Poyer 83rd and last. He's permitted 6 to 7 passes in his coverage area to be caught for 75 yards and a touchdown per PFF. His 150 passer rating against is 7th worst among all starting safeties. PFF says Poyer is Miami's 3rd worst player on defense this season, ahead of only David Long and Anthony Walker. Poyer is expected to miss his 2nd game in a row with a shin injury. Wilkins had 17 tackles and 2 sacks in 5 games with the Raiders before sustaining a Jones fracture in his left foot, an injury that required surgery and will sideline him indefinitely. Despite Wilkins' injury, the Dolphins are still expected to receive a 2025 third-round pick, compensatory pick for losing him, according to Over the Cap. Dolphins are also expected to receive a 2025 third-round pick, compensatory pick for Hunt, who PFF ranks 12th among 75 guards. Keeping Wilkins and Hunt would have been very difficult with the Dolphins' cap challenges. Both have been clearly missed. While Calais Campbell has played well, he's too old at 38 to give the Dolphins the volume of snaps that Wilkins did, which we all knew. And Liam Eichenberg has been uneven at right guard, pretty good at times, but poor in Miami's win in New England. PFF ranks Eichenberg 53rd among 75 guards this season. Incidentally, the Dolphins are expected to receive a 3rd-round compensatory pick, a 7th-rounder, as a result of losing Elliott. At nose tackle, the Dolphins opted for the cheaper Benito Jones over Raekwon, who received a 2-year, $14 million deal with Indianapolis and will play against his former team with the Dolphins visit the Colts on Sunday. Let's be clear here. The Dolphins didn't make a mistake by not paying Davis $7 million a year, but they did make a mistake by not finding a replacement better than Jones, who is rated 85th amongst 120 interior defenders after finishing among the worst defensive tackles in PFF's run defense metrics last year when he played for the Lions. Davis is ranked even worse, 101st amongst 120 ranked tackles. He has played 165 snaps, but hasn't started a game. Then there's the curious case of Elijah Higgins, a 6th-round pick who was released in August 2023, months after the Dolphins drafted him. The Arizona Cardinals immediately claimed him and has developed nicely there, catching 21 passes for 218 yards and 3 touchdowns in 16 games and 4 starts. By contrast, the Dolphins have stuck with Julian Hill and Tanner Conner and remain the NFL's only team without a touchdown catch from a tight end since the start of last season. Aside from the 2023 third-rounder Devon Achane and the 2022 7th-rounder Skylar Thompson, Higgins has accomplished more so far than anyone drafted by the Dolphins in 2022, which was Channing Tindall, Erica Zakama, and Cameron Good, or drafted by Miami in 2023 from Cam Smith to Ryan Hayes, who is no longer with the organization. So, I mean, very sobering and not in Chris Grier's favor. Now, a few things that stand out. I think, not adding a good run defender to replace Raekwon Davis has really hurt them. I think that's why you're seeing this leaky run defense the most. It's not so much Wilkins. I think Raekwon Davis is the guy in the middle we're missing. We're missing a good, stout, zero tech who can flex out to 1 and who can stuff the run. Now, Poyer has been terrible. Poyer, I've been talking about it since the start of the season. I have not held any punches. Poyer, never mind looking like he lost a step, he looked like he's lost a mile. And Deshaun Elliott was the move there. Deshaun Elliott was good for them last year. And when we all thought Deshaun Elliott had priced himself out. And then when you saw him sign for $6 million for 2 years, we were all like, what? What are you saying here? Right? Like we were all like, that was, I think Deshaun Elliott, Deshaun You wouldn't pay Deshaun Elliott $3 million a year? Now, with the AVG thing, if you're a Patreon or channel member, you know I had a big update recently talking about Grier's potential replacement and talking about Weaver's impact on the AVG decision. See, this is where you need to add some context, all right, with the AVG. AVG is a far better fit in Flores' scheme than what he is in Weaver's scheme. That's number one. So I don't think you'd be getting this level of play or this level of opportunity that he's getting in Minnesota over here right now under Weaver. Number two, AVG was Fangio's guy. Don't think for a second Weaver did not have input on Shaq Barrett's decision over AVG. Again, if you're a Patreon or a channel member, patreon.com/Phinside The NFL. If you want to be a channel member, hit that join button. You can go see my latest update. So, you know, I don't know what to say. You know, AVG, yes, this comes back to Grier too. Grier deserves some blame too. He should have stepped in and said, that's my guy. But I've already talked about this all season. Again, same thing with Robert Hunt in terms of the Raekwon Davis thing. You thought Benito Jones would be a sufficient, and you know, Peely and Gallimore would be a sufficient enough replacement in terms of stopping the run the way Wilkins and Davis did, Raekwon Davis did, and really Calais is the only one that stepped up, but Calais, like pointed out, he's too old. You can't depend on him to take those kind of snaps, which we all knew. But the rest have been not a bit hit or miss. The same thing can be said for Hunt right now. And I've said this. Y'all really thought Liam Eichenberg was a sufficient enough replacement for Robert Hunt? What did I say in the offseason? Right? We've seen Austin Jackson be good or really good at times in 2022 and 2023, right? What did I say in the offseason? What's the ripple effect going to be of Eichenberg next to him now instead of Robert Hunt? And what have we seen? Austin Jackson's been anywhere from average to above average to sometimes good. He's dropped down like a tier. Yeah, he's still better than Robert Jones and Liam Eichenberg. And then, you know, Aaron Brewer. Are we being fair to Aaron Brewer right now? Aaron Brewer's been good for what he's been asked to do. But look at the guys next to him. Robert Jones was a mitigated disaster all preseason and then all season up until the last game. The Patriots game, he finally was competent. Eichenberg has been a roller coaster. Really strong on that touchdown drive last game against the Patriots. But other than that, in that Patriots game, he was a disaster. He was terrible. And then he's had other stretches where he's been competent throughout the season and other stretches where he's been, yo, you got to get this guy out of here. But that was your answer to replace Robert Hunt. That's the problem. The answers, it's one thing to lose talent because you can't pay it. It's another thing to lose talent because you can't pay it and then have terrible options that are nowhere near the caliber of what you're losing. We're not expecting you to, you know, replace Robert Hunt with another Robert Hunt right away, but we're expecting you to have a good contingency plan. Same thing with Tua. The contingency plan at guard was not good. The contingency plan on the interior to stop the run has not been good so far. We're getting into the lack of solid contingency plans. That's what we're getting into. Shout out to a P3. She follows me on Twitter as well. She just gifted 5 memberships. Chuck Fins Up, Dana, Russell, Paulie King, Dad Dean. Shout out to you. I appreciate you. One of the Twitter followers showing love over here. Shout out to Penn. I remember you from Penn Asterich. So shout out to you, Penn. Thank you very much, Peastry, for showing love to the fam. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. So, in conclusion, here we are. I think they should stand pat for the next 3 weeks. I don't think it's time to panic yet. And you know what? If you don't like Grier and want him gone based off his roster construction to this point, do you really want to give him some of our war chests to make another trade? Think about that for a sec. Food for thought. Guys, shout out to BetUS for sponsoring this show. Well over 400 of you in the room. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new. And I'll be back tomorrow night for the finish line with Ball Game and Richmond Webb. Thursday, I'll be live with Neil for Fin Too Deep. Friday, we'll preview the Colts and Dolphins game. And then we are back on Sunday for the live reaction and post game. Fins up. I'll see y'all in the next one. Have a fantastic evening, everyone.